just popping in because I found some what I consider pretty crucial information today to help with the brain perspective of anxiety. The man's name, he's Australian, is Nigel Donovan. That's Donovan. He has a YouTube channel, but I came across one of his videos today in the Facebook feed because it was actually an advertisement, but it was called something along the lines of first aid for times of major stress. So anxiety is, when we're under times of major stress. So what I did today was I watched his video. The link will be in the comments below. I have got it from him, but what I've done is made up an actual first aid kit for you out of things that you'll have. So what Nigel does is he explains to us what happens in our brain, something I've been looking for a long time. I have heard it explained many ways, especially when you've seen specialists over the years, and I actually saw a lady who specialises in the neurological aspect of mental health, but he's the first person that I've come across that for me personally I went, yes, this is it. This is explaining it simply, and it's giving me the scope to go away and work in my life and work out what I need to see. So without further ado, the first thing that he brings up, and by the way, before we start, his video is only about 8 minutes long. I encourage you to watch it. I encourage you to go to his YouTube channel and subscribe, or at least have a look at his other brain videos, because they are interesting. But when you're in the middle of anxiety or trying to deal with anxiety, a lot of times the last thing you want to do is take on lots of information. So what I've done is condensed his video down to make it as simple as possible. And he even says, when you're having anxiety, all the chemicals that get released, it stops us from thinking, which anyone who's been in the middle of a shopping centre and the panic attack comes, well, I certainly know for me, the only thing that I can think of is I've got to get out of here. I'm trying to breathe, but I can't. I've got to get out of here, and I've got to get home. I want to get home. I want to be safe. And if I'm lucky enough to even think that much, it's a miracle. What I've done is make it simple for us. Okay, so he first of all explains, and this is very critical, that there's a mismatch in your brain between the way your brain thinks the world ought to be and the way the world is. So I wrote it down. There's a mismatch in your brain between the way your brain thinks the world ought to be and the way the world is. As an adult, as you can see here, he explains, the number one value for the brain is safety, and it's measured by consistency. He calls it an uncontrollable incongruence. That's a big way of saying that there's two things happening in our brain and they don't match. If, like for me, you were raised in a family that was mega dysfunctional, generationally speaking, so it wasn't just my family, it came down from many generations. It contained abuse of every form that you can think of. My brain from a very, very young age, and actually if I was to really seriously consider it, it would have been from in utero, because I wasn't planned and I was outside marriage, and oh my goodness, the amount of stress my mother would have been under back in the day, because also those in America, Australia is somewhat behind the rest of the world as far as social, being open socially, I suppose you would call it. So even my friends that come from America, I think I'll put that down for the moment, will tell you that Australia can be up to 50 years behind what they experience. So back in, when I was born in 65, you certainly didn't admit to having sex out of marriage if you did. And I know in America back then, there was free love and everything going on. My family was living in the backwater. Well, it wasn't to us, but it certainly was nowhere near a city. And so with my mother pregnant, my grandparents actually sat her down, well actually both sets of grandparents sat my parents down and said that she didn't have to raise the baby, she didn't have to marry my father, they would raise me. Either one of them, either set of grandparents would raise me if she didn't want to marry my father. Now back then that was actually a really big thing for them to do, because those of my age can certainly remember that in families you don't talk about this stuff. So the fact that they did was a miracle. In my life, I can see the mismatch already. So when you think about your life and what you were conditioned to, so my brain was certainly conditioned to a lot of darkness, negative behaviour. There was no positive input back in those days because we certainly didn't have emotional intelligence on our radar whatsoever, and so on. So I can see that my brain was trained from a very young age from my environment. The other side of that is, and the way the world is. Well, the way way the world is in my life is that I'm mature-aged, happy, going ahead with my life, raise my kids, so on and so on. So that's the way my world is. But my brain can't see that, can't comprehend that. So it made a lot of sense for me. And when I was actually writing out all of these things, I've actually had a real challenge getting here and getting in front of you. It causes me anxiety, very much so. So yesterday, even though I was sick and I was probably less animated than I normally am, I was still suffering very, very deep anxiety. At the moment, my body's hot and I know it's anxiety because my brain's going, no, this isn't a safe environment for you. See, in me, I have a belief because of my environment, I'm safe if you can't see me, okay? And I realised that today. Because when I was younger, the safest place for me to be was where people couldn't see me. Because if they couldn't see me, I couldn't get hurt. It's a relief to be able to say that and to be able to share that, because I know that for a lot of other people too that have come through abuse, life taught us at some stage in our life, for me it was very young, that it's much safer if you don't see me. When I realised that today, I thought this is so important for so many of you to know, and if just one of you benefits or we all benefit, then how much better will this world be? That we can be free. We can be free to pursue the life that we were created to live, born to live, whatever way you want to phrase it. So anyhow, the next part of his thing explains that the three main areas for the brain are, this is so the brain can feel safe, is orientation and control, pain avoidance and attachment, how well connected with people you are. Now I want you to really think about the last one, attachment. I mean, there's been a lot of psychological research actually done, and there's a whole theory attached to attachment theory. And if you go on to Psychology Today, that website, you can read about attachment theory, and it is easy to read and it does make a lot of sense. Our past can mean that we attach in a manner that is not healthy for us. So it comes back to our video a few days ago in relation to boundaries, developing healthy boundaries, so that when we attach to people, we attach in a healthy manner. I can honestly say that until recent times, apart from my children and possibly a few close friends, in the past I never attached well to anybody because of my belief that I'm not safe if you can see me. When you take one of these three, or all three of them, so when these areas are significantly compromised, your brain hits the panic button. So think about all your senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste. When you go out in public, all of those senses are the first things that get hit by what's going on around you. So when you're in a supermarket, or even, I know for me, the hardest thing for me to cope with when I'm out is, you know, where everyone sits down to eat? The food court. I want you to think about the noise and what's happening with all your senses. So there's chairs going back and forth. There's cutlery and plates being used, and noise, and people talking, and the volume increases as people can't hear each other, and it increases. There's people trying to get around, moving, and our brain is processing every bit of that. So whatever belief that you've got inside of you, so for me, I believe that I'm safe if I'm not seen, all this noise, my brain just hits the panic button, and it's called the amygdala, and apparently you've got one on each side. What has to happen now is we have to give our brain evidence that we have control. So what I did was, there's 5 things that you need. You can do this too, and I actually did it today. I took it with me. I got my handbag. I thought of all the things that we can do to put a kit together. So I got my handbag. This is what I did, and evidenced by the water mark. So the 5 things we need to do, and just a suggestion, get creative with it. Write down what you need to do, stick it in your handbag, because remember, when we're having the anxiety attack, we can't think. We want to grab something, and that's why I didn't mind putting it on a big one, because I knew that it would be easy to find and grab. The first thing you want to do is sit down or lean against a wall. You've got to give your brain the message that you're regaining control. What I did today was, I thought before I went, I thought about where I've got to go in the shopping mall. I thought about where I knew there's a blank wall, because I knew that sitting down wouldn't be an option for me. I don't feel comfortable sitting down at that particular shopping centre. It's not because there's anything bad there, it's just my comfort zone. I actually knew where there was a wall that I could lean against. The next thing is breathe out. The next thing is breathe slowly. Both of these things are letting your brain know, sending messages that you're taking back control. Taking back control, you're going to feel safe. Sip water, and he will explain how all of this happens in your brain, and wait 5 minutes. Let's let's face it, there's no rush. So what I did today was I took this with me. I picked out the wall. I always have my water, hence water drips on there, in my bag. So I didn't know that I could use it to help overcome the anxiety attack, but I've used it today and it did help. I didn't need the wall, but I did do the breathing out. The breathing out is only one breath, and then it was enough for me to breathe slowly. What I also thought of too, what's the one thing that we all have in our bags that can help me quickly regain some sense of I am fully present? So remember our last video? Our affirmation was I am fully present. So what I thought was, I have my keys, and what I thought was, somewhere I have so many remote controls, but I do have keys on here, is I went, I could just take the end of the key, and it's not sharp, you know, going to cut into me or anything like that. If I press it enough, not hard, but enough, it can help me remember to breathe. So in your bag there alone, with your list, then you grab your key and press, or you grab your water and breathe out, and then breathe slowly while you're up against that wall. Or if you're more comfortable, by all means sit down. Actually, when I think about it, you know, in shopping malls, how there's those wooden seats. I could have gone there and not the food court. But what you want to do is, what you need to do is pre-plan how you're going to carry all of that out. And that way, you're still going to feel safe because you've got a plan. Planning is 9/10 of success. If you're one of our precious individuals who's having a hard time just getting out of the house, you can still do this. There is nothing stopping you making a plan, because you know at which point of you getting out of the house causes you trouble at the moment. So let's say the hardest part of you getting out of the house is even just getting to the front door. So what you want to do is get your list. So you want to make your list, and you've got to have it near where you are. Even if you keep it in a book and memorize it, remember the one thing that will break all of this is consistency. So you've got to do the one step once a day, every day. It's in the consistency that you change your brain, you rewire the brain. And I know that works because the breathing technique we used in the last video, I did it for a minute consistently every night, and I could notice how better I felt just from 1 minute. So what you want to do with, if you can't get out of home and just saying it's the front door, is have this kit ready. Okay, it doesn't have to be your handbag, but have a kit ready. So you've got your card, what to do, got your water, have your keys. You might need them when you get out the door. Have somewhere where you can sit outside as well for when you get out that door. You're not asking yourself to go anywhere, but plan that one day you're going to get out the door. Then with your kit in hand, if you only get to the front door and you do your kit, do your first aid kit. So have your key there, press on it, right, get my card out, read it, breathe out, then breathe slowly. Sip my water. Breathe slowly. So I'm going to pick up my phone, okay, and I can put a timer on, and then I'm just going to wait 5 minutes while I breathe slowly. You can do that consistently for a week, and the only thing you do after that week is open that front door. You're victorious. You will have broken through. And then if for the next week after that you open the door and you stand there and you don't go out, you're still victorious. You'll have won another step forward for freedom for you. I'm not, and I will never undermine or even have you underestimate how hard this is, how long it takes, but I can promise you it's worth it. I can promise you that doing this and making an effort for you is worth it. One young lady asked me today, how are you so positive? And I just turned around and I said, because I refuse to let the people who tried to take my life away from me and the ability to have a life win. I will not let them stuff them. And even if it's not people, even if it's a set of circumstances, like I know one lady, she's very traumatized and stressed from things that happen at work. It wasn't even from her childhood. We have to fight, and we have to fight together, and we have to encourage each other. And I say have to because it is a choice that we make to be there for each other. Rewatch the video if you need to implant it in your brain. And let's face it, I have trouble accessing words, so I've already watched his video 3 or 4 times. Do it, but take the action. It is always the actions that change it. It doesn't matter how much you know yourself, it doesn't matter what area of life you're coming from, it doesn't matter what's happened. It's a brain, it's physical, and we are in control, and we can change it through consistency. I am going to make a part 2 on this first aid kit, especially for those of us that have come through sexual abuse, and the questions, actually not just sexual abuse, but the PTSD too, because it doesn't matter whether it's come from sexual abuse or not. The PTSD, it's rough. First of all, I just want to sit down and work out the best best way to give you some dynamics to help work through changing your brain, because yes, we need to change our brain so our brain knows that we're safe. With abuse, there's a whole lot of other dynamics that come into play as well. Blessings everyone, and bye.